The Indiana Fever absolutely dismantled the Los Angeles Sparks, and we all know precisely which storyline is about to dominate the discourse. We all know exactly where this is heading. I mentioned this to you all before tip-off, during this entire stretch of games. The prevailing narrative will be that this Indiana team functions more effectively without Caitlin Clark in the lineup. Just consider the numbers. Kelsey Mitchell operated with complete freedom, shooting 9-4-13 from the floor and 4-for-6 from beyond the arc, finishing with 26 points to go along with 3 rebounds and 3 assists. Boston converted 5 of 6 attempts, including a three-pointer, for 17 points. Billings contributed 15, and Harris added 16 of her own. The flow was effortless, the spacing was wide open, and there was virtually no pressure or anxiety in their execution. Of course, those pushing this angle will conveniently overlook the fact that 2 of the Sparks' most pivotal contributors happened to be absent from this contest. But I am telling you right now, with absolute certainty, the message that will be propagated is that this squad is simply superior without Caitlin Clark. That is the narrative that will gain traction. That is what the casual observers will proclaim. That is what they will shout from the rooftops. I mean, the Fever connected on 55% of their field goal attempts and shot 53% from three-point range. What more could you ask for? They pulled down 41 rebounds, dished out 23 assists, and committed only 12 turnovers. The underlying implication is that Caitlin Clark was unnecessary, that her presence was not required for this level of production. Everyone contributed. Every player on the roster scored except for Dantas, and at that point, what can you really do about it? Now, I am fully aware that a significant portion of my viewership did not actually watch this game live. I know there was a widespread protest, with many people making a concerted effort to remain steadfast and resolute in their decision to boycott the broadcast. Let me be exceedingly clear about something. I might not be the very first person to articulate this, but I will certainly be among those who do. The Indiana Fever are not a better team without Caitlin Clark. Let us be absolutely unambiguous about that reality. If you encounter comments elsewhere on the internet, from the detractors and skeptics who are determined to diminish her impact, claiming that Clark is overrated and that the Fever are demonstrably superior in her absence, pointing to this 111-80 victory as definitive proof, or arguing that Kelsey Mitchell is the superior player, my advice is simple: do not even bother engaging. Or, if you must, respond with a dismissive sure, a laugh, or an indifferent whatever you say. That has become my personal approach at this juncture. I am deeply invested in reading feedback and responding to my audience, remaining as active and engaged as humanly possible. That is precisely why I consistently emphasize the importance of watching the full content, subscribing to the channel, and leaving comments. I read every single one of them, and I strive to foster honest, grounded, and authentic dialogues. That is my commitment, and I intend to sustain that level of interaction. However, we all recognize that when individuals begin to advance arguments suggesting the Fever are more effective without Caitlin Clark, those are not genuine basketball discussions. Those are not substantive conversations rooted in reality. And I foresaw this development with perfect clarity. I predicted it during my live stream. I predicted it in my previous video. I knew this outcome was inevitable. I knew the Fever would secure the victory. I knew Kelsey Mitchell would tally 20+ points. This entire scenario was the most foreseeable event imaginable, almost as predictable as the Phoenix coach coming to the defense of Alyssa Thomas, which I plan to dissect in a separate piece because I have some thoughts to unpack there as well. But for now, I wanted to zero in on this particular game and the conversation swirling around it because those will become the dominant talking points. This happens whenever a superstar is unavailable, irrespective of the sport or the athlete. Whether it is LeBron James, Luka Doncic, Stephen Curry, or Kevin Durant, we witness this pattern every single time a marquee player misses an extended stretch. The question inevitably arises, are they actually better without Jason Tatum? Are they better without Steph? Are they better without LeBron? We see the graphics comparing team records with and without the player in question, and the cycle continues endlessly. Not even Caitlin Clark is immune to this type of scrutiny. However, the reasons for their success in this particular game are remarkably obvious. You do not even need to have watched the contest to understand why they won. A cursory glance at the box score tells the entire story. Since I know many of you did not watch the game, I am not going to break down the film or analyze the plays in detail. But the explanation is straightforward. Are you ready for this? Basketball is a fundamentally simple sport. If you follow the NBA, you have heard this expression countless times: it is a make-or-miss league. That is the essence of the game. You convert your shots, you win. You miss your shots, you lose. That is the bottom line. The Fever were knocking down their attempts across the board. Boston was 5-4-6, Mitchell was 9-4-13, Harris was 5-4-8, and Billings was 6-4-10. The only player who struggled with her shooting was Lexi, and she was the one who dragged down the overall percentage. Otherwise, they would have been hovering around 60% or higher from the floor, and the same applied from three-point range. If you remove Dantas and her late-game heaves from the equation, the team was shooting near 70%, which is an automatic recipe for victory. On the flip side, the Los Angeles Sparks faced the opposite problem. It was not about the Fever's stifling defense or impeccable rotations. The Sparks simply could not shoot the ball. They went 4 for 20 from three-point territory, a paltry 20% from beyond the arc. The Fever, by contrast, made 10 of their 19 three-point attempts. That statistic alone accounts for the difference in the final score. That is a gap of 6 made threes, which translates to an 18-point swing. That is the game, right there. So there is no need to lose any sleep over this outcome. There is no need to overanalyze the implications. There is no need to give any credence to those who are merely hating for the sake of hatred. Teams will win games without their superstar, and they will lose games without their superstar. That is simply the nature of professional sports. I urge people not to become overly defensive about this narrative because, as I have stated, this phenomenon occurs with every single superstar in every league. And this is where I genuinely feel sympathy for Caitlin Clark's fanbase, because the Fever and the WNBA as a whole have caused many of her supporters to develop a negative sentiment toward the league and the team. I am certain there are numerous Clark fans who were actively rooting for the Fever to lose in this situation, which is genuinely disheartening. That dynamic does not exist in other sports. You do not root for the Bills to lose without Josh Allen. You do not root for the Chiefs to lose without Patrick Mahomes. You do not root for the Lakers to lose when LeBron is out. You do not root for the Warriors to lose when Steph is sidelined. In those cases, you continue to support those teams, hoping they can hold the fort until the star returns. That is the logical and expected response. You should be able to cheer for the Indiana Fever and say, keep winning, climb the standings, and Caitlin Clark will be back soon. That is what should be happening. However, I believe many people are approaching this situation in exactly the opposite manner. To be fair, I am not blaming anyone for adopting that perspective. It is very much an athlete's mentality. When you are benched, a significant part of you wants the team to lose. If you are not in the starting lineup, a part of you desires the team's failure because it validates your importance and demonstrates that you are needed on the court or the field. Every athlete who has not had the privilege of starting throughout their career understands this feeling. Trust me, I have been a starter, and I have been the player barely holding on, at risk of being cut at any moment. A part of you definitely feels that way, especially if you genuinely believe you deserve to be playing. I have been on teams where I knew I should have been starting, and I was right about that. A part of you is just waiting, hoping they lose, so that when you return, the difference is unmistakable. I had a heated confrontation with my coach years ago over this very issue, and it actually turned into a valuable teachable moment for both of us. So this is a common, understandable feeling, and I guarantee that many of you are experiencing it right now. But it is a bummer that it has come to this. And the unfortunate reality is that people will use this as ammunition, claiming you are not a real fan, not a real Fever supporter, or not a genuine basketball enthusiast, but rather just an obsessed Caitlin Clark devotee. That accusation is equally unfair. If Steph Curry were playing for the Warriors, and you felt that Draymond Green and Klay Thompson did not have his back, and that Steve Kerr was setting him up for failure, and the NBA was failing to protect his health, Warriors fans would feel exactly the same way. LeBron James fans and Kevin Durant fans would respond identically. This is not unique to Caitlin Clark's supporters. The entire phenomenon and how it is unfolding is unique to Caitlin Clark, but the experience itself is not unique to her specific fandom. That is the fundamental distinction. I wish I could offer another decent, somewhat comparable example, but I genuinely cannot think of one. The closest parallel might be fans of an individual quarterback who they believe will be great, and then he gets benched, perhaps because he is a rookie or an older veteran being replaced by a younger player. A part of you hopes the team loses to validate your belief that the benched quarterback should be the starter. I could see that happening. If fans of J.J. McCarthy if Kyler Murray were the starter, or in other similar situations. Actually, I just stumbled upon a perfect example, Shedeur Sanders. I promise you that Shedeur Sanders fans were rooting for the Cleveland Browns to lose when he was not the quarterback. They wanted Dylan Gabriel to fail, for Flacco to fail. But that is slightly different because it involves a starting versus bench dynamic. It being a quarterback is a fairly specific situation, and most teams are not in a position where benching one quarterback for another would satisfy everyone. It only occurs in those peculiar situations where the quarterback situation is uncertain. But that is actually a decent comparison. And yet, is anyone ever arguing that Shedeur Sanders fans are not real football fans or not real Browns fans? No one is making that argument. I am glad I thought of that because it is a perfect comp. I have spoken with many Shedeur fans and Browns fans, so I know this from personal experience. So, I am curious to see how the ongoing conversation continues to develop surrounding this topic, and ultimately, how many games Caitlin Clark misses, and how games like this are weaponized as evidence that she is not that valuable and that the Fever are actually better off without her through addition by subtraction. Those are my thoughts. I would absolutely love to hear yours. What do you all think about Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever? Do you believe they are better without her? You already encountered those types of comments? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I read every single comment, whether you agree with me or disagree. Let us engage in some discussions, even some spirited debates, but ultimately, let us just have some fun. Please consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I would love to see you become part of it. I want to cultivate something that we all feel genuinely connected to, something we are excited to be a part of. I believe we are well on our way to achieving that. Please do not forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it significantly helps with visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much.